This time on Rad Rat Video, we're talking about how to start your own skate brand. Let's do it. Welcome back to Rad Rat Video, a channel about skateboarding and everything in the skateboarding world. I've got some questions from you guys that were all submitted through radratvideo.com. There's a form where you can submit your own questions to be considered for a future video. The first one I got is from Liam, who asks, do you think anyone has ever boneless front flipped? Or if you think it's possible? I know there's a scooter trick called a fast plant front flip, which can be done on flat. What are your thoughts on the elusive boneless front flip? I think the difference by doing it on a scooter, I have seen that trick before, is that your hands start up here. So you can kind of push forward. Like if you're going to do a boneless, you got to reach down and grab the board and then jump. So to reach down and then jump, but like I don't think it's the same thing. You're compressed already. You've got to jump, straighten out, and then tuck again. It feels like it would be much, much harder. Is it theoretically possible? Maybe out of a bank, if you're going super fast, you can grab the board, kind of keep your arms straight so you're as straight up as possible. Then it would be kind of similar to the scooter trick, and you just kind of touch your foot as you jump out. It would be incredibly difficult. I think the physics of it would probably work out somehow, but yeah, that would be very, very difficult. And it probably wouldn't even look that good, but maybe. Okay, next question is from Scott, who asks, let's say you do a backside tailslide kickflip to fakie. Is it okay to say back tail backside flip out? I hear this from a lot of people in the community, and I wonder if you think a flip trick in out of a tail nose slide should count as a front side or backside flip if it's only 90. Sorry if this is a confusing question. You're awesome, by the way. I live in Colorado too. Cool. Okay, so not talking about skateboarding tricks, but just language. The primary purpose of grammar is to communicate a point. Okay, I read a whole book on this because I'm the world's biggest nerd, and it was talking about how, like, if your point is understood quickly and clearly, then you've done your job, whether it follows a technical rule or not. So I was talking to one of my patrons about the fakie nose slide. Now, to me, if you ask me what a fakie nose slide is, it's where you're going fakie, you pop the tail, and then you slide on the nose. But if you say fakie nose slide to someone else, they might think a fakie ollie into a switch nose slide, because you're looking over the shoulder as if it's a switch nose slide. If it was a back tail, you would be facing the opposite way. So they don't think of that as a fakie tail slide. They think of it as a fakie nose slide. They're wrong, but that's not the point. The point is, how do you communicate what trick you're talking about? And if you say a half cab nose slide, that seems very clear, because that way you think of it as a half cab and then a nose slide. And so fakie nose slide, half cab nose slide, kind of pointless to say a half cab when you're only doing a 90. And if you did a half cab nose slide to fakie, that's not even a half cab at all. That's a quarter cab and then back. But people will understand what you mean if you say that. And so if you say a back tail backside flip, you obviously don't mean you landed fakie. And if you did a whole 270 spin, you would say that because that's hard and you would want to brag about it. So back tail backside flip, pretty obvious what you mean. I think it's perfectly fine. Okay. Next one is from Matt, who says, I'm curious when skaters land a trick backwards off a rail or a ledge, why it's referred to as to fakie. The way I understand, fakie is when you ride in your normal foot stance, but backwards, rolling in the direction of your tail. And he's saying that for most tricks where you land to fakie, it should be more accurately to switch. He doesn't want to split hairs when it comes to technicalities. Okay, so the reason why is because to fakie was a thing in pools before anyone had ever done a switch trick before. If you think about that old school classic board from the 80s, this probably has spider webs all over it. I don't want to be too disgusting for you. This is my Rad Rat board. This was an official board. You've seen that on the channel before, I'm sure. You got this big old tail. You've got a tiny nose. They used to have even smaller noses. Like this one actually has a little bit of a nose to it. But if you were to land, yeah, you can see all the spider webs on this. I hate my basement. I gotta move. So if you picture doing a trick on that big tail, and you come back in, it's definitely to fakie. You're never going up there in like dropping in switch and being ready with your front foot on the nose in switch. It was not a thing. So that's like the history of it. People would say to fakie. Decades go by, we still call it to fakie. And it just feels like it makes more sense because you haven't switched stances. Like fakie, like you said, is going backwards. So if you did a trick normal and you land it, you're still in normal, you're just going backwards. So backwards normal is fakie. So I don't necessarily think it's more accurate, but there's so much history to it that there's no other way that you would say it. Okay, the last question is from Arthur, who says, "Hey dog, wondering if you have any tips on starting your own skate brand, as you're like smart in financial stuff and I'm just a dumb skater. Much love from South London." Okay, being from London, I can't give you very specific tips because it's a different country. I don't know how all of the legal things work out in the tax situations and all that. My first tip, well, maybe wait until you're absolutely sure you're going to do this. Go through the rest of the exercises before you actually do this, but get an accountant and a business banking account. So one of the first pieces of advice I got when I quit my job and started to work on my own and do like freelance and all that, somebody said, get an accountant. Even like no matter how much you pay them, it'll be worth it. And I put that off for like 5 years. I didn't do it. And I finally did it, and he was right. There's so much stuff I could have been doing, things I could have claimed on taxes, things I could have expensed, things that I was supposed to be doing that I hadn't been, all that kind of stuff. So exactly what kind of business, legal thing you want to make. Probably not a corporation yet. Again, you're in a different country, but in the US, eventually it might be a corporation, but not quite yet. Like exactly what you have to do from that kind of standpoint and what kind of records you need to keep for taxes, all that kind of stuff. Get a professional who knows what they're doing. And if you get a business banking account and a business, a bank card that you can use to buy stuff, that makes it a lot simpler. It's very clean at the, when you do your taxes at the end of the year, you have everything expensed out because it's just your bank statement. Next thing is to do a branding exercise. So what is your brand going to do differently and better than all the other brands? Why would I go into a skate shop, look at the normal stuff I buy normally? What makes me turn over to yours and pick that instead? For most brands, the decks are just the same as everyone else's, but their graphics are different and hopefully better. Some people will prefer it to what else is on the shelf at the time. Is it your art? Is the art just so good that it's going to fly off the shelves because people are very excited by it? But better would be if the board itself is special. Is it a high-tech thing? Is there a carbon fiber insert? Is there whatever? Is it a really interesting shape? What is it about your board that makes it a better buy than the other one? It could be price. It could be that you are making pro level boards without the pro prices and you just have a slightly cheaper option. That would be perfectly fine too, but you need to have an answer. What am I going to do better than every other brand? What is going to set me apart and put me ahead of every other company? It's an important question, and you need to know that, and you need to be able to pitch that. So if you were to, we'll talk about dealing with trying to resell them later, but like you're going to have that pitch. You're going to have to know when someone says, hey, what's your brand about? You need to have an answer, and it has to be, well, I've got, world-class art that I used fine art instead of just graphics. I do this cool new thing where I put in whatever, Have an answer to that and have it be really firm. Market research is the next thing. So in your country or in your city, in your local area, what do the skate parks and skate shops and all that, I meant to say, what do the skate shops look for in a brand? What makes them want to buy it? What is the profit margin per, what would you have to wholesale a board at for them to want to buy it? How many boards do they sell? What do they have people come in and ask about? when a new skater comes in, or someone who actually comes in and wants to ask a question, what is the question? Can you answer it better than the other companies? So like, what is your local, if you're going to sell in your town, if you're going to sell online, then that's a different thing. What are you competing with? Who else is out there? How are they answering those questions? That's a very important thing to figure out, how it's going to be to actually get your boards in stores. Are you going to really lean on the fact that you are you're not an imported board, you're a locally made board, and you're going to really lean into that? That's maybe certain companies, different shops would be interested in that, but you've got to do that research. Having a marketing plan and partnerships. Okay. What are you going to do to get your boards out there? Are you going to have a traditional team? If so, who? Not necessarily names at this point, but like, what kind of skater are you going to target? Are you going to try to get a local guy who's really good at skating? That's kind of the traditional thing. Are you going to try to find someone who has a big online following on their Instagram or something like that? That might be a little bit smarter, because all you really need to do is get people to see the board. If it's like at a local event and it's just the local hero and he gets the board, then maybe, that's up to you. You need to figure out exactly what that is. But are you even going to have a team? If you end up being like the low cost option, you might not want to have a team. You might just buy ad space and, work on your brand that way. But that's something you have to think about. How are you going to market your team or your product? It might not have a team, but you got to decide that. And your partnership. So yeah, like working with stores, working with different brands. Are you going to try to get your boards, with a company and have like a parent company who's going to distribute all your stuff? Is that the kind of thing you would like to pursue? Have answers to all this stuff and really, really think it through. It sounds really cool to make your own brand, but don't jump right into making the boards. Make sure you know exactly what you're doing and how you're going to do it, and have an expectation of how it's going to work. All that stuff is important, and it's going to be your best bet and not failing immediately. I don't know the statistic, but 50% of companies fail in the first year or something like that. I made up the number, but a lot of people, if you go into it without having a firm plan, you're going to be surprised by how difficult it is. So that's my actual advice for how to start. I mean, that's any kind of company, to be honest with you. All of this was more about selling a product. But yeah, if you want to start a company, that's the stuff you want to consider. That's the stuff you want to probably have like a business partner to bounce this stuff off of. You want to have an accountant. You want to really think through all of this stuff before you pursue that. But yeah, that's it for now. If you have any questions, go to radratvideo.com. You could submit them there on the homepage. That's where all of these from this video came from. You can also submit them through Patreon, where you get some other perks while you join there. You can join through YouTube as well. Get some different perks there, which are pretty fun. I kind of like the stuff that I put in there. And yeah, aside from that, hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on the next video. And I'll see you later. Thanks for watching.